Today is Tuesday is brought to you by MSI, the leading brand in high-end PC gaming. The music source. Make your live streaming look and sound professional. Get your Mackie and other pro audio products at the music source. XSplit, a live streaming broadcast application. And Smart Communications. Lead the smart life. Click the links below our video to avail of all our sponsors' products and services.
Yan. Good evening. Oo nga. Anyway, good evening sa inyong lahat at welcome na naman sa isang oras ng Today is Tuesday. Martes po ngayon dahil Martes ngayon. Today is Tuesday with Jing Garcia and Tito Tribs, Raymund, Tribdino. Tito Tribs ng Malaya Business Insight. Jing Garcia po ng The Manila Times and of course ng TechSabado.com. Pero ano po isang oras po tayo dito sa Today's Tuesday. Hindi po katulad ng TechSabado na nangyayari tuwing Saturday with Atty. Melvin Calimag kung saan pag-uusapan natin dyan ang mga technology and everything. Pero pagdating po sa Today's Tuesday, anything and everything po pag-uusapan natin. Pero sabi ko nga, nag-request nga ako kay Tito Tribs, no, na i-continue natin yung usapan natin last Saturday. Tito Tribs.
Yes, magandang gabi po. Raymund Tribdino po, Tito Tribs ng Malaya Business Insight. At tama Tito Jing, yung usapan natin natigil tayo dun sa kwentuhan ng blogger accreditation, pero napag-usapan natin dun yung mga iba-ibang klase ng mga plataforma at kung saan nagkakaroon ng usapin ng mga bloggers. So that for today, for tonight, Tito Jing, pakilala ko na yung ating kasama natin dito.
Of course, para mahaba usapan natin. Mahabang
usapan natin dito ngayon. So, medyo mahirap yung binigay sa aking assignment ni Tito Jing kasi dahil kailangan makakuha tayo ng isang magiging resource person natin na nasa blogging community na sa tingin natin ay makakapag-contribute ng mahusay dun sa talakayan natin. So walking through the people I know, I invited some including si Neil Jimenez ng gizguide.com, your gadget coach. Neil.
Hello.
Pasok na. Yan.
Magandang gabi po.
Okay.
Thank you for having
Neil, good
me.
evening. Of course. Thank you. Good evening, Neil.
Oo. So, Tito Jing, sabi ko nga kay Neil dun sa pag sieve ko, ano ba sa Tagalog 'yun? Nung parang hinihimay ko yung mga usapan na yan. Si Giz Guide kasi well curated yung material nila, makikita mo. Hindi kasi tulad parang ito kasi yung I think ito muna yung ikutin natin sa talakayan natin doon sa blogger. Ibabalik ko yung definition natin ng blogger kasi yun yung isa sa mga bagay na hindi pa na-define or hindi pa maliwanag yung identification na galing doon sa Malacanang, di ba? Sabi, ano raw ang social content creator, ano ang blogger, anong influencer. So, yes. Doon sa pinag-usapan natin last time, ang social media content creator, lahat yan, that will cover anybody who is doing content, whatever that content is, on all of the forms of social media that allows it or that are, well, whether they're popular or not, kasi meron tayong mga social media platforms yan na hindi masyadong popular or nakatoka lang sa isang klaseng community tulad ng mga pang-professionals like LinkedIn, di ba? Or mga scientists lang, mga ganyan. So, may mga social media communities dyan. Basta nagke-create ka ng content, yun ang tawag sa'yo. So, ang kailangan i-define kung sino ang blogger at saka sino ang influencer. So, batay dun sa usapan natin uli nung huli, ang mga bloggers ay mga nagke-create ng content, whether sama-sama sila sa isang website. It's usually a personal blog or people coming together in a community producing.
Bakit nga ba tinawag na blog? Ano ba? Di ba logging? Di ba
logging. Yes, yes.
So
galing sa...
And this started way back siguro in the late 90s.
Yes. During the time of Tito Jing, remember when we were very young in the internet, di ba? It started with the electronic billboards.
Diba? Yung hindi
BBM
Electronic billboard nga, yung mga ano.
Yes.
Tapos actually yung isa nating pating nakakasama din natin dito, si Mom Vlogger, si
Yep.
Noemi. It's one of the earliest Pinoy vlogger.
Pinoy, correct.
Oo, isa sa pinakamaaga na na who took advantage of that of that platform. Kaya nga siya yung una as a mom vlogger. I think late 90s pa or early 2000s. She was
Yes.
already vlogging, and kaso hindi siya available ngayon. Sana nakausap natin siya. Kasi siya rin isa rin sa mga nabigyan ng accreditation to cover Pinoy. Si President Noynoy Aquino noong mga time na yun when social media was becoming becoming a platform of choice of some of the of some of people who wants to get information from social media.
Correct. Tsaka Tito Jing, interesting yung story ni Ma'am Vlogger kasi during that time, before the presidential elections during the time of Pinoy, nagkakaroon na ng traction yung social media. I always remember the late Senator Miriam Defensor Santiago saying that the elections will be fought on social media. Ay, mga 2006 pa niya, 2007 or 2008 niya ata sinabi yun.
Yes.
Tapos, minention nga niya yung vlogs. I also distinctly remember she mentioning vlogs kasi siguro mulat na siya rin nung time na yun kung paano magkakaroon ng influence yung mga vlogs. Yung vlog nga pala, Jing, di ba? It's a pagdugsong ng web as in the World Wide Web at saka logging. Web blog siya talaga, di ba? Tapos naging blog na lang yung salita. So, basta yung content mo, ipapublish mo sa web, then you have a blog. Right?
Pero ito yung malaking distinguish ko sa when it comes to blogging and journalists. There's no such thing as there is such a thing as a legit journalist kasi may mga fake na journalist. Pero there's no such thing as a legit blogger kasi lahat sila blogger.
Okay, yan. Tanong
Vlogger
natin.
lang sila at vlogger lang sila.
Correct.
Yung legitimacy, hindi hinahanap yan. Kasi wala naman ba't ka hanapin legitimacy? Talaga kung nagbablog ka and you're online, you are a blogger.
Correct.
Yun ang ginagawa mo, yun ang platform mo, or yung video ang platform mo, and you put it online on the web. Wala magsasabi sa'yo kung legit ka o hindi. Ikaw yun. Ikaw
Correct.
na yun. Ganun
Ikaw na yun.
Hindi ka tulad ng journalist kasi may mga fake, may mga house show, may mga diba?
Oo.
So meron
nagpapagawa
legit,
ng ID. Yan.
Sabi nga nila mas matakot ka sa mas matakot ka sa journalist na nagpapanggap na journalist.
Yes.
Kaysa sa vlogger ka na nagpapanggap vlogger, ba't hindi ka naman magpapanggap na vlogger? Vlogger ka nandun ka sa
Vlogger
internet.
ka talaga.
Vlogger ka talaga.
Yep.
Kahit anong gawin mo dyan, meron kang website at meron kang linag na personal or nag-review ka ng gadget, nag-unbox ka, gumawa ka ng tourism video, that's it. You're already a blogger.
Correct.
Pero tingin natin kay Neil kung tama
Neil,
nga.
Tingin mo, in your experience, you've been around. O di ba? Your site's been around.
Of course.
For the longest
Guide,
time.
Tagal na ng Gis Guide.
2015 actually.
2015.
Well, kasi depende yan sa, for me, kasi I think it over the years the whole thing evolved If you think about it, when you were before diba, we had that message boards before. That's where people would parang forum siya where people could
billboard yan,
express their
bulletin billboard.
Kumbaga parang views and then their own experiences and they could share and then build a community. Sa blog naman kasi it also evolved into that. Pero at first, I don't think that was the point. The whole point of a blog before was like your web diary. You would just write stuff and then talk about your experiences. Kumbaga parang nobody thought that it would become something like what it is now. Before, people would just write what they love about their experiences, what they felt, etc., etc. Some people decided to record their experiences, their adventures, their purchases, or whatever topic. And it slowly, at some point, when, of course, since people at that time were already learning about Google, if you put it out there, at some point, if you make a search, you'll find that post. And then eventually, everybody now, and even at that time, people were already learning how to use Google as a tool to get more information, right? Sometimes, of course, not everybody can buy a book. Not everybody has access to information right away, right? That's an analog version. But what you can do, if you have internet, you can use Google to search for stuff. Eventually, people started searching more on Google and then finding those blogs. That's where it started. And here we are now, wherein people search everywhere. but this in different platforms now. We have, for example, now YouTube. YouTube itself is a giant search engine as well, but instead of a blog, it's a video. This video could be anything, depending on the creator or depending on the one who made the video on YouTube. We also have Discord now. There are a lot of people on Discord. If you're a fan of Discord, you also have also podcasts. Di ba ngayong pandemya,
Yes.
actually, nauso yung podcast. Again, it's the same thing. It's just different forms of a platform that are slightly different, but they serve the same purpose. And eventually, since people wanted to be able to share their interests, they wanted to be able to find people who have the same hobbies or whatever it may be, they gravitate towards that, whichever platform they prefer. For example, they just like want to listen, they go to podcasts. If they want to read, they go to a blog. If they want to just keep watching videos, you have YouTube or you have Netflix. Basically, that's it. They all have similar they're all platforms basically, but it depends on the user itself whether which they prefer and which they tend to be attached to. May it be emotionally or may it be because for whatever reason. And in going with this, blogging has evolved from that. Before, as you said, journalists are journalists. They studied, they found out how to write. And also the event. You know how hard it is to be a journalist. You go to an event or you go to on site or on location, then you have to make a report like that. Some people, people who became bloggers, there wasn't even a term before. They just wrote what they felt. It just transformed into something similar, but not necessarily, I should say, the same. The distinction is clear. Of course, if you're a journalist, you also have to build credibility. The same thing but right now, bloggers, vloggers, or creators, they also have to build credibility, which is what people decide to believe in them or to be influenced by them. So it's there's a distinction, but I think there are also some similarities.
Yeah, that's true.
Yung sabi niya about credibility, totoo yun, especially for journalists, lalo na journalists and their and their company. Like for example, the Manila Times, kailangan credible ng mga journalists niya kasi kung hindi, you'll be fired. So pagdating naman sa blogging, I think yung blogging sa totoo lang ito, correct me if I'm wrong, credibility is not their yung parang yun ang unang priority nila. Credibility is not hindi yun ang eventually yung mga influencers na lumaki ang following, I think doon na naisip, doon pa lang mag-evolve.
Actually they develop a responsibility.
Doon yung responsibility and credibility. Pero doon sa mga first timers, siguro mga 10 ako nag-start ako mag-vlog pakialam ko sa credibility ko, basta ito isusulat ko. At nag-start ako ng YouTube channel ko, pakialam ko sa inyo kung maniwala kayo sa video ko o hindi. Basta ito yung laruan ko ngayon. In-unbox ko yung bago kong yung hobby, and that's it. If you find me credible, okay lang. If you're not, well, hindi yun ang habol ko. Wala akong pakialam. Basta panood mo. Di ba? Yun eh.
Pag nilagyan natin kasi Tito Jing ng yung word na credibility, interesting kasi pag nilagyan natin yan ng meaning, ang ibig sabihin ng credibility, pagkakatiwalaan mo to be trusted or bibigyan mo ng emotionally you will invest, whether you will believe in something, di ba? So yun yung credibility. Tapos I remember Tito Jing when I was with Business World way back, panahon ng Word Star. Panahon ng Word Star. Kasi Business World was actually the first one who went online. Napaka-visionary si Raul Locsin. And I was in the team. They had to study HTML and so on and so forth. Pero even as early as then, naalala ko sinabi niya na that the whole media scenario, the whole media platform will change because of the internet. Sinabi na yan. Tapos I also remember the first Philippine Blogging Summit sa UP ginanap yun sa UP. Tapos
naalala ko rin yata yun.
No? Tapos nagdatingan yung mga vloggers. Tapos in here I will put substance to what you said. That yung bloggers, when they come together, they're really highly opinionated, wala silang pakialam na ito yung gagawin ko and I have the means to do it. I have a camera, I can translate this video into something, di ba? And I have the connection or whatever you call it then to upload the content kahit na wala pang YouTube, meron kang website, di ba? And so on. So, totoo yun. And yung credibility na yan is that if you create content that is believable and believable enough, di ba? So, nagkakaroon ka ng audience, nakaka-build up ka ng credibility. Pero, pag tinignan natin from an academic perspective, kung ano yung ibig sabihin ng credibility, when you look at the definition of credibility, nag-offer ka ng trust doon sa isang sinabi kasi provable and verifiable. Yun yung kailangan, di ba? Yun yung totoong kailangan pagka pinag-uusap. Kunyari, gumawa ka ng isang gadget review. Tapos, just because, you were treated well, sasabihin mo, this particular gadget is really good. That's actually an upfront to your audience, to your consumers, di ba? Kasi hindi mo sinabi sa kanila yung totoo eh. And then that will also break you. Di ba? Pagka yan yung magda-damage ng credibility mo, yan yung magda-damage ang reputation mo.
Apektado tuloy yung yung website mo and
yung
everything.
Website mo, yep.
Pwede ka lang hindi balikan, pwede kang tira-tirahin naman ng mga comments sa mga comment section, di ba? Ganun.
Tama.
I think nagiging problem, para sa akin, i-break ko lang ng konti. Ang nagiging issue yata ngayon para sa akin, nagiging issue sa akin, yung pag-distinguish yata na hindi lang problema dapat ito ng mga vlogging o ng vlogging community or vlogger community. Yung pag-distinguish ng ano ka ba? Propagandist ka ba?
Yan.
O talagang ka lang?
Actually, it's a very important point. I think it's a very important point.
Or you're really doing it to disseminate factual information.
Correct.
I think yun ang nagiging issue eh. Kasi wala naman akong issue sa mga vloggers and sa vlogging community, di ba? Wala naman tayong issue dyan eh. Kasi I love YouTube.
Yes.
Dahil ang dami kong hobbies. One of the best shows sa pinapanood ko dyan tungkol sa astronomy, tungkol sa diecast car collecting, tungkol sa mga robot toys collecting. Pinapanood ko yan sa YouTube and I find it the best. Bakit? Kasi nga yung mainstream media, we'll call them mainstream media like yung sa akin, Manila Times, ABS-CBN, GMA7, the mainstream media, hindi din na nako-cover kasi lahat. They don't cover everything, di ba?
They can't, di ba?
They can't. So there are people na even sabihin natin, okay, meron silang segment for tourism. Okay.
Yeah.
Pero tuwing kailan mo mapanood yun? Then suddenly this vlogger, kagabi lang napanood ko, na-tsempohan ko lang siya. Taga-Tagaytay kami ni Mel, silang Tagaytay kami. Napanood ko yung tour, nagpa-tour siya, thepoortraveler.com.
The Poor Traveler.
Poortraveler.com siya, yung kanyang vlog about Tagaytay. Sabihin na natin, sa 20 restaurants na sinabi niya, 2 o 3 lang ang alam ko. And we've been there for 5 years? Diba? Makukuha ko ba sa mainstream media yung information na yon? Hindi. It's just from a blogger. Kaya yung mga ganun, I enjoy it. So I think, ang nagiging issue yata ngayon, yung propaganda. Ginagamit as a propaganda platform, yung mga bloggers. What do you think, Neil?
Actually, let's be honest. It's through the years, over the decades, any form of media can be used for propaganda.
Oh yes, totoo yan. Even mainstream media itself.
Yeah. Let's be honest. So parang I think it will be part of it na. It will be part of it. Expect it. But I think it all comes to the viewer or to the reader to be discerning na.
Yes.
Kasi
kailangan may critical thinking talaga eh.
We can no longer kumbaga parang control this. No matter what happens, people with interest will always use whatever platform they can to further the interest. So it will come to the blogger and to the reader to be discerning or to uphold their may integrity, credibility, and their own kumbaga parang their own beliefs. It's up to them to protect it.
Tama ka dun eh. It's a problem of the end user. Sa totoo lang, para sa akin, it all boils down kung paano i-discern ng end user information. That's why kailangan talaga may critical thinking, mga Pinoy. Kaso yun nga lang yung problema, di ba, alam naman natin, madaling ma-persuade because of propaganda. Pero yun na nga or misinformation or disinformation at meron nga tinatawag bago ngayon yung malinformation, di ba? So,
Yes.
doon tayo. Pero tama it all boils down sa end user.
Pero ano yan Jing, kakambyuhin ko lang yung sinabi mo kanina, yung tungkol dun sa end user. Kasi I agree with what Neil said that any form of media that's available can be used as a platform for
kahit
propaganda.
Pelikula, kahit films.
Kasi yan, di ba? Iginuhit sa tadhana.
anything na warmongering movie sa US. It's correct. A propaganda film.
Oo. Di ba tandaan natin.
Pero don't get me wrong, guys. I love Top Gun. I love Top Gun. Pero kumbaga parang it's obvious na it's a propaganda for you to join the Air Force. Parang kumbaga parang ganun. It's not bad. Pero kumbaga parang it's like that.
Yeah,
pero,
well, a lot of movies have achieved or have taken that role.
May subliminal message para.
Yes. Pero ano lang, alam mo naman, Tito Jing, ang hilig ko bumalik doon sa konteksto ng history, di ba? Tandaan natin, panahon ni Hitler, yung Ministry of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda. Di ba?
Direkta no? Direkta talaga si Goebbels.
Direkta na. Pero, kasi, nung time na yon, didefine nila yung propaganda as what the Catholic Church defined propaganda, which was like to spread the good news. Ganun. Yun yung totoong meeting niyan di ba? So, kasama diyan yung music, kasama diyan yung culture, arts, and so doon nila
dinadaan. Yung bad what do you call this? What do you call that term? The connotation. It wasn't a bad definition before, but the connotation lived through the experiences of the
Nazis, correct. Tapos pag hinugot pa natin uli kasi doon sa na yon. For example, in the production of content, di ba? In the production of content. Yung currently na nangyayari ngayon is that the reason why it is only in platforms that allow it. For example, certain networks, di ba? Certain networks na obviously may slant doon sa kanilang wala silang curation ng pinag-uusapan nila, or in fact they're actually working towards achieving or supporting whatever goals that they have, di ba? So nagkakaroon ng shift kasi I remember I had an argument regarding SMNI. Tapos minention ko, sinabi ko lang, I said mali yung ginawa nila. Pumunta sila doon without yung tungkol sa case ni General Palparan.
Yes.
Sabi ko kung alam nila ang trabaho ng journalist, dapat alam nila na lahat yung mga bagay na yan, kung meron silang editor or whatever, lahat yan may prosesong dinadaanan. Di ba? So, bukod sa nagkamali yung Bucor, but even the so-called journalists who pursue the story there should have known what the protocols were. Di ba? Ganyan ang Malacanang Yung Malacanang, ang dahilan bakit may protocol. Dalawa lang naman Seguridad ng presidente, yun yung unang-una. Tapos pangalawa, magkaroon ng order dun sa paglatag ng mga katanungan kasi sa dami ng itatanong, hindi yan masasagot lahat-lahat, di ba? Yun lang naman yung nakalatag dun, yun naman yung gusto Kaya yung, for example, ngayon yung press accreditation sa Malacanang with bloggers, I've always repeated my stand, I am for the democratization of information. Pero syempre, di ba, may limitation din yan.
Sabi nga ni Bob Reyes, set the standard as pareho nung pag-accredit sa mga media.
Asan nga pala si Bob, no?
Diba, nung Saturday kasama namin. Basahin ko na yung mga nasa comment section natin. Tester Mulo, good evening. Sabi niya sa atin. Michael Lance, happy Tuesday, Tito Jing at Tito Tribs. Si Rikit Gavino, magandang gabi, Tito Jing at Tito Raymund. Alvin Pingol, good evening. Today's Tuesday, Sir Jing and Tito Tribs. Macy Felix Vigilia, good evening Kuya Jing and Brother Raymond. Martes Salviejo, magandang gabi po sa inyo. Kaya sabi nga ni Martes, okay, web vlog, vlogging, video vlog, vlogging. Yes, it is.
Yep.
Yun nga, kaya
Correct,
nga vlogging kaya tapos web plus vlog, sabi nga ni Michael Lance. Sabi ni Edwin Galvez, kasama natin PR to sa sa industry. Yes, Jing, blogs used for this information should not be allowed to prosper, but who decides? The ones who actually leads in disinformation. Doon nga medyo thin yung line paano natin ko-control yun
That's a very difficult line to discern.
Sabi ni Michael Lance, Cardinal Tagle is a perfect of propaganda feed.
Grabe naman.
Tapos sabi din ni Edwin Galvez, mainstream traditional media are subject to supposedly rigorous standards. Bloggers are free spirits, but then to line them up as equivalent to journalists is quite insane. Although question nga yung pag-line up nila as same level as as mga journalists. Pero sinasabi ko nga, marami naman journalists na hindi naman journalism ang kinuha. They don't even know. Natuto lang sila sa beat.
Sa newsroom
Dahil yung mga even the editors themselves are not journalist graduates. Marami hindi journalist.
Let's be honest kasi parang not necessarily you just because you didn't take it as your core as your study for your college or for your masters doesn't mean you're locked into that position. Sometimes kasi diba, let's be honest, before those courses were built, somebody had to go through them with the unknown, diba? Sometimes ganun that's usually how it is. Sometimes wala naman tayong mga courses dati for IT.
Totoo yan.
So
experience na lahat yan
kumbaga parang there are things, mga jobs right now na somebody had to go through blind. Not necessarily na they have to take it as a course kasi it all has to start with somewhere, diba? Na it has to start with nothing. So I actually respect people na kumbaga if they studied journalism or not. If they got into that job and they're doing well, why not?
Why not? Oo nga. Pero yun na nga, pagdating naman sa journalism, kahit na hindi ka journalist graduate o you really need to learn the ropes. You really need to learn the standards. You really need to learn even the layouting and even the style book. You really need to learn that, di ba? Yun nga yung difference nga sa journalism sa mga bloggers. Marami kang kailangan malaman. Kahit na sabihin mo experience lang. Tapos yun na nga sa journalism you need to learn the beat, 'di ba? Kasi may kanya-kanyang mga beat yan sa sa mga newspapers o even sa TV. Pero yun na nga, may nag-question nga mga vlogger, kita niyo mga vloggers, wala nga nagre-report tungkol doon sa pagputok ng bulusan. Hindi naman kailangan pumunta ng vlogger taga Manila para mag-report I'm sure meron sigurong vlogger din doon sa bulusan na siya magba-vlog noon.
Yes.
Oo, di ba? Siya magba-vlog about it. Pero hindi lang mo siguro nakikita dahil wala sa echo chamber mo. Kasi di ba, may mga kanya-kanyang circle yan, pero gaya na sinabi ko nga, I think talaga yung question talaga nila sa Malacanang ngayon, yun din sinasabi ni Edwin Galvez, yung mga propagandist na vlogger, yung talagang puro good news lang, puro good news lang ang sasabihin about a certain personality or pero ganun din naman sa showbiz Di ba may cartel din naman kung sa journalism din naman may cartel. Hindi sa showbiz, meron naman Makanora, may Makabilma. Puro good news ang ipasabihin sa tao. Ganun din.
We see that in something else. If you look at K-pop right now, people as in literal, they call it their bias, di ba? Hindi ko sino yung pili nila. Everybody has their own favorite So parang you can't, kumbaga parang some people will always prefer their favorites. Pero syempre, something as sensitive as the news from the Malacanang should be official. It has to be it has to be curated as well.
Yun naman ang difference.
It's a public information.
Public information and national interest.
Yes, and we're paying for it kasi our taxes are funding this thing. It should be correct.
Oo. Yun naman is something na kailangan mo i-distinguish from other news Kasi kahit ako hindi naman ako makaka-penetrate as a journalist from the Manila Times, hindi naman ako basta-basta makaka-penetrate ng palasyo Di ba? Nawala akong accreditation na as a journalist. Hindi naman ako, I've been a journalist for over 20 years. Pero hindi naman ako basta-basta papasok. I'm a journalist, kailangan ko i-cover si si BBM or si Duterte, hindi naman gano'n kasimple yun eh. Diba?
Tama. Tsaka
may standard ka talagang susundan.
Yan, you use the right word, Tito Jing, standard. Pag nagtuturo ako ng journalism, lagi kong naiisip yung 5 pillars nung ethical journalism, 'di ba? Yung una, truth and accuracy sa reporting, kaya hukay ng storya, dapat sigurado yung pangalan na ilalagay mo, ultimong yung middle initial dapat tama kasi mag-iiba yung tao pag hindi, di ba? So cardinal principle 'yon. Yung second, yung fairness and impartiality. Yung pag nagkaroon ka ng bias at nagkaroon ka ng slant dun sa mga obviously dun sa pagsulat mo, at hindi mo inaral kung paano mo ilalatag. Kasi pag gagawa ka ng article, gagawa ka ng political article, tapos nilatag mo na in such a way na yung billing, di ba, it will appear to the reader, di ba? But you have to be careful with that. That's why it really requires a lot of wordsmithing, yung journalism. But syempre, ang karugsong niyan, merong accountability, mahalaga. Tapos yung parang nawawala ngayon sa maraming journalists. Like, there was recently a columnist who made a comment about Mindanao. Nalungkot ako dun sa comment na yun.
I know, I heard about it. This was terrible.
Nalungkot ako dun sa comment na yun kasi one of the 5 pillars of journalism, of ethical journalism, is humanity. Mahalaga na i-consider mo yung humanity. Kaya ang good published pieces, they're usually genderless, 'di ba? Unless it's a story of women against violence, 'di ba? So kailangan makita natin, or kailangan habi-habi, magkakadugsong yung mga yon in order for it to happen. That's why yung comment ni Edwin kanina, I agree, hindi natin pwedeng i-line up pareho kasi if by the definition of blogging is always laying down a personal opinion about something, so nasaan yung fairness and impartiality doon, di ba? Paano mo makikreate yung fairness and impartiality? And also, if we look at journalists who became bloggers, excellent, di ba? Parang yung nila, yung takbo, or bloggers who learned to become journalists, di ba? Yon, bloggers who learned to become journalists.
Actually, daming ang bloggers na mas magaling pa magsulat sa sa mga journalists. Sabi ito yung kaibigan ko na kasama ko dati sa Interaction, si Carlos Conde of Human Rights Watch. Sabi niya quote ko lang siya. Sabi niya, "Disinformation does not exist in a vacuum. It thrives not only when tyrants rise, but mostly crucially when democratic vanguards such as journalists fail in their mission."
Correct.
Yes. Oppose the use of bloggers and such for disinformation, but damn, journalists really ought to do better. Yun yung sinasabi ko nung Saturday, di ba? Na nagkakaproblema tayo dun sa yung nalihis yung mga journalists. Di ba? Nalihis sila eh.
Isa Tito Jing sa mga trabaho ng journalist ay maging monitor ng power. 'Di ba, kaya nga fifth estate. And minsan may nag-argue sa akin yan. Paano ko? I'm just a tech journalist. How can I monitor power? Sabi ko, you monitor power precisely by, for example, yung particular item na nire-review mo, pangit. Say it as it is. Give an honest review, 'di ba? And if you give an honest review, you're doing a great service to the consumer. Maaring tinaob mo yung brand na supposedly mabait sa'yo, inaalagaan, pero hindi kasi sukatan yun eh. 'Di ba? Hindi yun sukatan. Ang sukatan ay kailangan gagawin mo yung trabaho mo. Ang trabaho na yon ay i-lay down yung katotohanan or i-lay down yung mga bagay-bagay na kailangan pag-usapan. Kanina in the dinner table, Tito Jing, nag-uusap kami ng aking anak, yung dati mong columnist sa Manila Times, si Derek. Pinag-uusapan namin yan about bloggers being accredited. Tas Alam mo, sagot lang niya sa akin, simple, if they don't control it, it'll be another avenue or another tool for disinformation.
Oo, yun nga. Yun
Diba?
yung ano eh. Yun ang
Oo.
masakit doon eh. Yun na, nagmumukhang ano nga, propaganda, magiging propaganda movement yun
Correct.
sa grupo nila. Pero it's something that we can't I don't want to use the word na stop because you cannot do that eh.
Yep.
I think it's their prerogative talaga. If you're in power, you need someone to say
To rara you.
to
Yeah.
rara you. You need that. It's the other side, the other part of the mainstream media. Eh, ang problema yung mainstream media nakikisabay sa agos.
Correct.
Hindi na magko-complain.
Or
Pero
natatakot.
Oo, kasi nga kukuyugin sila. Yun na naman.
Natakot.
Ngayon, pag nag-start na naman yung kuyog na yan, it will be another cycle na naman of another 6 years. So ito, quote ko ulit si Carlos Conde no, sa kanyang Facebook post. Sabi niya, you can't defend press freedom but argue that only you are entitled to it.
Yes.
You can't preach media ethics but argue that only you are good enough to uphold it. You can't demand competence but argue that only you are capable of it.
Tama.
Yun yung sinasabi natin nga, even tayo no Saturdays sa TechSabado, sinasabi natin, hindi natin monopoly.
Yes.
'Di ba? Ang press freedom actually yung sa as a journalist. Kasi we already you're still evolving, but we already evolved into another platform, which is social media. This happened 10 years, 15 years ago. It already started. And parang ibang tao ngayon pa lang nila na-realize na, oh my God, ba't ganito na? Ako, I've been telling that nung nasa interaction ako. Kailan ba ako nasa interaction? 2010, 2011. Nag-iiba na yung landscape ng journalism. Di ba? Matagal na nagbago ng landscape ng journalism. Even in the US, we already have Huffington Post, we already have the Daily Beast. Na ang galing ng kanilang approach when it comes to journalism, but they're all blogs. Pero ang ganda ng approach nila. And I think meron din naman dito pangilang-ilan, meron. Even Manolo Quezon is a blogger.
Yes, true.
And he really writes really good articles.
Correct. And
Diba?
talks about it also.
Yes.
Balik ako kay Neil, Tito Jing. Balik ako kay Neil kasi I'd like to use the example of gizguide.com. Kasi si Gizguide, pagka punta ka dun sa site, tapos may kailangan ka, I want to know about this new phone or I want to know about this new thing and so on. So may mga review sila. Pero hindi lang yon, meron silang tutorials, di ba? So tingin mo ba, Neil, pwede ba yung formula na yan para magamit natin na para maibago natin yung sinasabi ni Jing kanina na ma-develop natin yung critical thinking sa Philippines? That same formula.
Actually, it's actually should start with basic education. I mean, I'm pulling from my experience kasi let's be honest, when I was a kid, the most basic form of critical thinking na naalala ko, the one that trained me to become who I am now, is yung problem solving sa math, yung 4 stages ba yun, yung parang papalista sa'yo na ganito, yung parang, basta di ba, if you remember, in the 90s kasi, 90s ako naging kinder or prep eh. The very first thing that you will learn from math class is yung problem solving na yun, magbabasa ka ng paragraph. So parang you have to identify kung ano yung
putulin mo, yeah.
Tapos parang alamin mo kung i-subtract mo ba to or i-add mo to or ganyan. So parang it all comes down to that basic thing na you have to question the thing. Sometimes kasi, let's be honest, sometimes pag nasanay ka naman na yun ang palagi mo ginagawa, problem solving ka doon, malay mo ba kung kunwari may mistake yung book?
Which is actually nangyayari.
nangyayari yun, di ba? So parang if for example, you're a student and hindi mo naisip na pwede pala mangyari yun, would you question the book?
Well, that's something that has to be developed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kumbaga parang because of that problem solving, I always question things.
Yeah.
Kumbaga parang nag-develop sa akin. So
correct.
Maybe we can do it with blogging. Maybe. If for example, you have your audience is very young. Kasi it has to start from there eh. Kasi the very foundation of your, I guess, way of thinking, how your mind works, starts there. The very foundation is when you were a kid. So maybe with your parents as well.
Mm.
So parang I think that's where it starts. Kasi parang for me, the thing about my dad, um, he doesn't spoon feed me. He lets me take it on my own a lot of the time. So parang it's frustrating kasi wala akong matutunan. I have to learn by myself. Kumbaga parang I have to fend for myself. Sometimes, let's be honest, some people don't get that. Parang anong nangyari, they just get spoon fed. So parang they don't really do the critical thinking they need. They can't be discerning of everything. Sometimes rin, ang nangyayari rin, sometimes people are very kind. So parang they also see that the world is kind. So they never question na meron palang interest tong whatever other new person that comes into their lives, diba? So parang, I guess, for me, blogging can be a platform for that. Pero I really think it should be, critical thinking should be thought at the very the foundational age of a young person. Kasi let's be honest, some people ngayon dahil lumaki na sila, they think that their experience is like this. Sometimes sarado na sila. They can't teach them new tricks. Some people are open, pero let's be honest, medyo mas madami rin yung medyo mas stuck in their ways, kumbaga.
Pero nandito na tayo kasi sa kalagitnaan na ito di ba? The thing is, all of this happens on this particular platform, di ba? On social media, on the internet. And then it's all played here. So, what can we do there are many efforts there. I'm sure there are many efforts, di ba? Pero kasi yung narrative na yon ginigiba ng isang solid flood of lies and of pag-pour out ng mga kabalastugan para lang labanan yung mga bagay-bagay na totoo. Di ba? For example, sabihin mo, merong sasabihin, tapos pag sinabi yun ng Rappler, automatically, walang kwenta, di ba? Bias media, di ba? Right? Di ba?
Paano babasagin yun?
Paano natin babasagin yun, di ba? Paano natin babasagin?
That's a very long conversation to be honest.
Actually. Neil, totoo yan.
Kasi let's be honest, some people kasi either they don't have time to really talk it out, or kumbaga parang they don't want to change na, kumbaga parang right away they don't believe you. Kasi sino ka ba? You're a stranger to them
Oo.
Kasi let's be honest, sa Pilipinas kasi Marites culture tayo. And not to be pero let's be honest, mas maniniwala ka sa kumpare mo or kumare mo kaysa sa
kaysa sa lolo't lola
kumare
mo.
ako. I've experienced this I used to be a nurse. I'm still a nurse kasi I have a license as a nurse. Pero I have family members who don't believe me whenever I tell them something, di ba? Mas maniniwala pa sila dun sa parang remedy ng ganito, ng ganyan. Although there are applications for that if you're very spiritual. Pero my point is, for health, sometimes kahit nurse na ako, hindi pa rin ako pinapaniwala. They would still rather believe their kumpare, their kumare.
Yeah.
So parang, again, this is a very tricky subject. It's not just, there's no one solution, there's no one answer. Sometimes it varies from not just the end user, it also varies from the writer or the blogger or the journalist. It also varies from the medium. Kumbaga parang it's such a complex thing. It's a very long conversation.
Yeah.
So that's why I said kanina na I think that's the best ways to start we can't change a lot. Kumbaga parang it's a monumentous task try to change people na who are set in their ways na. That's actually a losing battle
Yeah.
What you can change is the kids. So education.
Tama yan. Just imagine this pink movement, they were trying to change everything in less than 6 months. 4 months actually.
Yes.
And something that was already planted for almost a decade.
Correct.
Diba? And talagang,
and even before Tito Jing, 21 years.
Talagang may hirapan
20
talaga
years.
sila if propaganda lang ang kalaban mo. Diyos ko, nakita ko naman sa YouTube how it was done.
Correct.
And it was done perfectly.
Yep.
Talagang hindi well-mannered daw. It was well executed.
Well executed and well staged talaga.
Yes, talaga.
Whoever was the head of that should actually, I mean it morally it's questionable, but let's be honest, that feat, that ability to have that result is actually quite impressive, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's going to be a case study for a lot of
it will be.
a lot of other especially mga political campaigns globally.
Correct.
How did they do it, di ba? Incredible.
Pagka magkaroon ng Joseph Goebbels Award, yan ang mananalo. Diba?
Pwede.
Diba?
And,
Yan ang mananalo dyan sa award na yan. Kasi ito pa isang tanong. Ito pa yung isang tanong. This is a question that I want to ask Neil also as part of the blogging community. Kasi, syempre, sa totoo lang, ang blogging community is actually very, very strong. Ano nga like Tito Jing said, there was a time na and it's the fault also of let's call it mainstream media, quote unquote, of the media outlets that are is because dahil real time nagagawa ng mga bloggers or ng mga citizen journalists yung mga bagay-bagay, di ba, sabi nga ni Jing doon sa TechSabado, CCTV footage, ganyan, di ba? Naging tamad na di ba? Naging tamad na So parang nagkaroon ng how do you say it? Nagkaroon ng parang consolidation na at one point na it became very dependent on that because of the accessibility of people to that content, di ba?
Yeah.
So parang, di ba? So parang yung sinasabi ko, Neil, kung accessible yung content na yun, hindi ba natin pwedeng can't we attack it from here in the middle ground?
Kasi if you look at it this way, kasi parang let's be honest, right now the internet, you can find almost anything, any information you want to find, it's on the internet, right? Almost everything. It's accessible to anybody with an internet connection. But even if you have all that information, it still depends on the reader or the user.
The one who will absorb it.
Okay. How they will interpret it, how will they apply it to their lives, or will they, the even question is, will they even apply it? Because let's be honest, there's a lot of people who just read books, but they don't really apply what they've learned. And how many of the population is actually applying that? Or for example, as I said, this is a very tricky and very complex answer to any. It's human nature, basically. We humans are very complex. So parang we can leave it there. We can democratize it all we want. Pero the question still remains: will the target audience actually use it? So yeah, I think it's actually good na we can democratize it. Pero the question is, will they be able to understand it? Will they be able to apply it? Will they be able to interpret it?
I think that's a major problem in democracy. It's both a bane and a boon when it comes to from democratic information. Ang dito but I will still take it rather than I will still take it anytime rather than rather than being fed information na hindi ko alam kung totoo o hindi. Ayoko ng Orwellian type na scenario na
I love that word, Orwellian.
Diba, na yung information is being fed to you from the powers that be, na kung ano lang gusto nilang i-feed sa iyo, that's it, di ba?
Correct.
Yeah. Kasi parang, let's be honest, again, for those people who are feeding your information, malay mo na linis na yan to their interest.
Of course.
Or for example, is it complete or incomplete? Kasi we all know, incomplete information is more dangerous than no information at all.
Yes.
Mas dangerous ang incomplete. Let's be, how do you know? Lalo na if you're trying to learn. So if the audience knows nothing, tas parang if they see this fact, ano mangyayari? Kasi yun yung sabi sa kanila, yun yung finid sa kanila. So how are we gonna be discerning about that? Not everybody can question it kasi pag galing sa isang reputable source, diba? So how will that be? It's a very complex thing. So parang I think we can only do so much, pero we can only do what we can at a time.
Yeah.
We cannot we're not perfect. We cannot account for everything. We can do so much only.
It's yun nga, both a boon and a bane for democracy. I think hindi ka masasabing flaw ng democracy yan, pero it's there. It's part of democracy, di ba?
Yes.
Yung misinformation and disinformation, it's there.
Correct.
Pero do you believe in the saying na democracy is just a tyranny of the many?
Yes, it is. It definitely is, di ba?
Yeah.
It's the tyranny of the majority, and the inherent weaknesses of that democracy is, one, yun nga, when the majority rules, then it will be what will be applied. At saka yung paghimay ng power na inafford ng majority for somebody to rule or whatever, di ba? So it's always at the expense of minorities, of the minority.
Yes, kaya nga maraming galit sa democracy. Kasi maraming galit, hindi lang mga tyrants, pati na rin yung mga yung mga mahilig sa democracy pero hindi sila manalo-nalo kasi
siguro one factor of that is that sometimes people don't really know what they want. So they only know it when they see it. Sometimes,
so true.
Actually, oo.
Kasi parang, I mean, they think na at the time, they think na ganito yung maganda. Pero when in practice, sometimes it's not the same. Or what they thought it would be. Yung mga ganun ba? That's another one reason that could be.
Neil, I'll ask you a question. What is the general feel in the blogging community about the announcements of well, syempre the blogging community is larger than where we are in, di ba? Pero we have many bloggers who like cover everything from tech, lifestyle, and whatever.
Yeah.
So what do you feel?
Well, kasi I'm from a very small group of bloggers in the tech community. Diba? We're not a lot, so I'm not a good representation of everything. But for me personally,
listening to the grapevine,
I think I think getting a credibility accreditation for that specific kumbaga parang for the Malacanang post is actually a good thing. Kasi parang let's be honest, it's public interest, it's national interest. It should be by people who are discerning, who are discerning, who are credible, who have their integrity in mind. Kasi let's be honest, it's not a very good thing to have just to find, as you said earlier, to just turn in that avenue into another avenue for propaganda, diba? So I think it's actually a good thing for me personally. Because as I said, from all our conversation today, we can only do so much. We can only account for so much. We can't account for everything. But this, I think, is the next step that we can take.
Okay. Pero define mo na sila eh. Sinabi mo na dapat yung magiging accredited, dapat meron silang specific qualifications. They have to be professional, they have to be, di ba? So dapat
I think I think there should really be at least a standard, as you said earlier. Your term is a standard. Kasi I think that's a very important thing. Kasi it's not just about one life. It's all the Filipinos. It's 100 million people. And when you have a responsibility for that many people, I think there should be a standard.
Yeah.
For me,
That's
anyway.
True. Yeah, that's true. I think so too. So, Tito Jing, bigla ko lang naisip, Tito Jing, kasi nung nag-rise up yung usapan ng tyranny of the majority, bigla ko lang naisip yung the right to ignore the state. Di ba?
Marami nang gumagawa nun ngayon. Especially after June 30.
The right to ignore the state. Kumalat lang. Bigla lang dumapo sa isip.
The tyranny of
numbers. Paano ignore the state? What is happening ba with that one?
Well, I know that if you argue on the idea of ignoring the state, ibig sabihin parang you will live as a citizen of the state pero wala kang pakialam.
Paano pag kunwari it's the other way around? Paano pag kunwari wala kang magawa?
Oh, well.
Paano pag ganun, di ba?
Kasi problema eh. I think that's the whole experience natin. Ewan ko lang for the past 6 years. That's why that's the most frustrating part. So para for me as a journalist, as a media, yun the way media was treated in the past 6 years. Sabihin na natin, yes, democratic, pero grabe yung kuyog na inabot ng
actually, it wasn't democratic media at all. It was an impression of democracy, di ba, Tito?
Kasi kinuyog talaga yung media na in all sides. Hindi lang hindi mo alam kung you have an idea na it's state sponsored yung pagkuyog sa'yo, pero wala kang proof. Yun yung frustration mo ngayon, di ba?
Yes, di ba? Wala kang proof. Tapos appearing to be operating under the rule of law.
Pero the law was weaponized. Was weaponized against you.
Correct, di ba?
Tapos, I think this is not the only time that we've seen it, no? I think we've seen it so many times in other countries, not just
Yeah.
us.
Yes,
Well, that's
pero
true.
ito naramdaman ko talaga this past 6 years.
Oo.
Hindi
Kasi,
katulad nung panahon ni Pinoy
yep.
or ni GMA or ni kasi hindi ako journalist yung panahon ni Marcos, so parang pero alam ko yung ganun yung sitwasyon ng mga journalist yung panahon ni Marcos Senior na talagang tameme yung journalist, kaya nga nagkaroon ng mosquito journalism,
mosquito
no?
press, yeah.
Mosquito Press. Kaya ayan yung dyaryo ni Tito Tribs, isa pinakaunang Mosquito Press. Pero yun na nga, nung panahon din ni GMA, medyo pero pakiusap lang na hindi walang kuyog pa noon, hindi katulad ng past 6 years. Talagang kuyog to shut you up, di ba?
Correct. Ramdam mo yon kahit hindi mo nakikita.
Ramdam mo kahit hindi mo nakikita.
Ramdam mo kahit hindi mo nakikita.
Kaya ano ko lang itong mga
Sige.
Alex Fuentes, good evening po. Today is Tuesday. Tapos 7 hostings from Singapore. Good evening, Tito Tribs and Tito Jing. Good evening, 7. Michael Lance, kinalimutan ilagay ang critical thinking at logic sa K-12, sabi ni Michael Lance. Ito ba yan? Tester mo lo, yep, even patients, yung tungkol sa disinformation. Yep, even patients tell me to my face there is no COVID.
Yep. Biro mo yun.
Oo, di ba? Gerber Award daw yun.
Actually, I've heard that so many times kasi I have a lot, kasi bad nurse ako, so I have a lot of friends and colleagues. Diba? I have friends and colleagues na talagang ganon kasama. Meron na sila.
So how do you break that?
Pero wala pa rin eh. As I said, it's rooted basically on their way of thinking. How they absorb information eh.
Breakdown of logic na yun eh.
Sobra. Tapos, yun na nga, hirap i-fix. Mukhang mauulit na naman to sa next 6 years. How do you fix it? Yun nga, tanong ko na nga nung panahon nito ni Duterte, matatapos ilang weeks na lang. How do we fix this? Pero wala. I don't think we can fix it. Okay, sabi ni Edwin ulit, Galvez, journalists are merely purveyors of truth, but Malacanang should tell the truth. Kaso, hindi, sa totoo lang
it might not be. Yeah.
Mga powers
sometimes
that be, they always
telling
lie.
The truth is more harmful than actually
wag the dog yung dating nun.
I mean, let's be honest kasi parang sometimes the truth is actually worse eh. And not in the sense na
the truth hurts kasi.
The government itself is not in that sense, pero more sometimes there are truths that are kept from the public to protect them eh.
Protect
I mean not all.
Protect the state, but not protect their personalities.
Correct.
Protect the state.
Pero as I said, all of this is all we're talking about is very complex. We can never really give one solution.
Yes, tama. It's a very complex na walang single solution. Jerry Conto, sabi niya kakaiba ang demokrasya sa Pilipinas. Yes. Yung mga vlogger nila ang pinagmumula ng fake news. Yun ang problema eh. Ito hindi lahat. Hindi lahat. Medyo nakakahon kasi yung mga propagandist. Kasi talagang marami talaga.
They're allowed to think of that way kasi lalo na pag kunwari if their experience with the blogger is negative, diba? They're allowed to think that way. And I'm actually open to that kasi I'll be honest.
Critical construction, constructive criticism yan eh.
Meron talaga. I mean, I'm sorry pero meron talaga tayo nakikita na it's a part of the machine.
Yun ang dapat talagang yung maging discerning yung mga Pilipino. Kahit sino man nagbabasa o basta nakakita din sa Facebook, sa mga social media, sa YouTube. You should at least try to distinguish kung totoo o hindi yung sinasabi ng tao. Diba? Yun lang talaga eh. At nasa end user pa rin talaga yan eh. Kasi yun na nga, gusto natin demokrasya, gusto natin nagrarally tayo, gusto natin ng nakakapunta tayo sa mga porn sites, gusto natin kasama yun eh sa democracy. Gusto natin nakakapunta tayo sa mga bars, nakainom tayo ng alak. Yung demokrasya natin, gusto natin na we can grow our riches, pwede tayong kahit ilang kotse bilhin natin. Pero yun na nga eh, may lahat yan eh, may consequence lahat yan eh. Yung democracy talagang
pero dito Tito Jing kasi sa community na iniikutan natin kailangan natin alalahanin. So, I will supplant what Neil said. Kailangan natin alalahanin na dito rin actually nagsimula dito sa digitized community na ito, dito sa platformang ito, dito nagsimula yung katakot-takot na disinformation. So, di ba, kailangan natin ayusin din dito sa platformang ito. Paano natin gagawin yon, di ba? Paano natin sisimulan?
I think hindi naman siya more of nagsimula. It evolved. Kumaga
It
parang
evolved.
to become like that. Kasi parang at that time, let's be honest, not everybody thought that it would become as big as it is right now. So parang regulation did not come in. Kasi parang, let's be honest,
we don't have regulation until now.
Pero ito, you mentioned regulation. Di ba may pinopropose si Senator Pangilinan na to regulate disinformation daw. Yun ang medyo para sa akin, slippery slope yan.
No.
I think that's a mountain that he that I hope kaya ba niya akitin yung mountain na yun? Let's be honest.
At saka isang oras ang usapan na naman yan dito sa today's Tuesday.
Isang oras na naman.
Tingnan natin kung anong mangyari. Pero anyway, 9 p.m. na, so nakisang oras na tayo.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Pero invite mo sila sa sa iyong website.
Hello, thank you for those who are watching or listening in. I am Neil Jimenez from gizguy.com. We are kumbaga parang a meager-sized blog site that we report. We report on tech. We write. We basically before we were just writing about tech, but then eventually it evolved into a form of journalism na rin kasi we would rewrite news from about tech. Yung mga phones na lumalabas sa bansa, we would write about it here so people in the Philippines could read about it. So parang it became a form of journalism na rin. And then eventually, because of that, companies took notice, and then we were able to review phones. Ayan, so that's what we are. We review phones, and then we cover releases of phones from other countries and also in the Philippines. So kung interested kayo doon, you can visit us at gizguy.com. You can also ask us questions. If you have any tech-related questions, you can message us through our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We also have a Tech Talk and YouTube. So thank you guys for having us.
Yun. Maraming salamat, Neil. Tito Jing, magpapaalam na rin ako.
Sige. Okay.
Sige. So magandang gabi po sa lahat. Si Raymund Tribdino, Tito Tribs ng Malaya Business Insight. Bukas po ang aking infotech page. Available din po yan sa www.malaya.com.ph. Hanapin nyo lang yung infotech section. Meron po akong sinulat na article tungkol sa Ukraine at Russia at ang dumadagdag at lumalaking problema sa digital space doon. Grabe, pag you'll be the things that are happening on the digital space in Ukraine and Russia. Ang laki talaga. So yun po, marami pong salamat at magandang gabi. Yes, thanks Neil. Back to you, Tito Jing.
Okay, thank you Tito Tribs at thank you very much Neil Jimenez.
Thank you, Ren.
Guest co-host namin today dito sa Today is Tuesday. Yan po yung pag-usapan namin. At invite po ulit namin siya para po mapag-usapan ulit itong mga tungkol sa mga pagbablog at saka mga pagbablog. Yan po. Gizguide.com. Matagal-tagal na rin po yan na online. Kaya isa na yan sa mga...
Magsa 7 years na ata.
7 years. Congratulations. 7 years.
Thank you.
So, ibig sabihin 10 years old ka na.
Mga 11. 11 to be exact.
Ayun po, alam niyo pag tumatagal talaga yung mga ganitong mga plataforma, ibig sabihin may credibility na sila.
Correct.
We actually worked very hard at the very beginning. We parang parte na yun ang
kung wala 2 years pa lang yan, tapos na yan, sarado na yung mga kumpanya yan. Pero anyway, sige. Maraming salamat ulit. Jing Garcia po ng TechSabado.com at saka ng The Manila Times.
Yes, thank you, Ira.
You're welcome. Huwag niyo pong kalimutan sa darating na Saturday, TechSabado rin po. 8 p.m. din po kasama naman si Atty. Melvin Calimag ng Newsbytes.ph. Follow at i-like niyo po kami sa aming mga social media pages, facebook.com/TechSabado saka facebook.com/Newsbytes.ph. Nasa Twitter din kami at TechSabado saka at Newsbytes.ph. Sa mga nanonood sa amin sa YouTube channel, subscribe lang po sa ating channel and of course, like niyo po ang ating mga pages naman sa Facebook. Yan, maraming salamat sa ating mga kaibigan sa PLDT Smart Group Corporate Communications Team sa walang humpay na pagsuporta ng ating mga online shows tulad po ng TechSabado at saka Today is Tuesday. Thank you MSI Philippines na pagsuporta rin sa ating programa at saka sa ating website. DSTECS sa pagsuporta naman sa TechSabado.com, Maki at saka RCF para po sa mga audio equipment na gamit namin dito sa TechSabado at saka Today's Tuesday. Mabibili po sa themusicsourceph.com. Locally distributed by Forerunner Technologies. Okay, do what is morally good and do what is morally right. Don't forget, TechSabado this Saturday. And as a COVID survivors, lahat kami dito sa TechSabado at saka sa Today is Tuesday. Wear a mask, stay home, and stay safe. Take that vaccine at saka inyong booster pag available na po. Maraming salamat. Good evening. Have a great week ahead, everyone. Thank you.